Far out in the dark, past the place where the planets thin away and the sunlight fades to almost nothing, a small white world is turning. It is the brightest cold thing for billions of miles in every direction. A sphere of frozen air and ice so pale it shines like new snow under a winter moon, though no moon hangs over it, and the nearest true light is a single sharp point you would mistake for a star. There is no wind to lift that snow. There is no sound to cross it. There is no warmth to soften its edges. It simply turns, as it has turned for the whole age of the Earth and longer, wheeling once around a sun it can barely feel, along a path so wide that a single circuit takes more than 5 centuries to close. Its name is Eris, and tonight you are going to drift slowly out to meet it. You do not need to hold any of this. There is nothing here to learn for later, nothing to keep, nothing that will be asked of you in the morning. Let the words move through the way faint starlight moves through a window, touching you for a moment, then passing on, asking nothing in return. Some of these wonders will follow you down into sleep, and some will dissolve before you wake, and either way is exactly as it should be. This is the strange comfort of things this distant. They have already outlasted everything that ever worried over them, and they will keep their turning whether you remember a single fact or not. So let the mind go loose. Let your eyes close when they wish to. Out where Eris drifts, nothing is in a hurry, and tonight, neither are you. Begin with the distance, because distance is the first thing about this world the mind must soften to hold. Eris orbits the Sun at present from roughly 96 times the Earth's remove. 96 of those great strides astronomers call astronomical units, each one the full span from here to the Sun. That is around 3 times as far out as Pluto rides, and Pluto already lies at the cold, ragged frontier of the familiar. Light itself, which crosses from the Sun to the Earth in about 8 minutes, needs something closer to 13 hours just to reach Eris. A message sent there and answered would take the better part of a day simply to make the crossing. The world is so remote that for nearly all of human history, no one so much as suspected it was there. That faraway sun is not the warm golden disk you know. From the surface of Eris, the sun would show no disk at all, only a single brilliant point, fierce and tiny, far too small to feel. It would be the brightest object in that black sky by an enormous margin, hundreds of times brighter than the full moon looks from here, and yet it would cast a light so thin and cold that high noon would resemble the deepest dusk. You could stare straight at it without flinching. You could hold up a hand and find almost no shadow falling behind it. The star that rules every season on Earth, that warms every ocean and feeds every green leaf, becomes, at that distance, scarcely more than the sharpest point of light in a sky already crowded with them. In that thin light the surface gleams with a brightness that strains belief, for Eris is among the most reflective worlds in the entire solar system. Its pale shell of ice throws back something close to 96 parts in 100 of the faint sunlight that lands on it, nearly as bright, surface for surface, as a field of clean snow on the clearest winter morning. Almost nothing else of comparable size shines so purely. The rocky worlds nearer the sun are dusty and dark beside it, swallowing most of the light that strikes them. Charcoal and old asphalt are their nearest earthly cousins. Eris behaves instead like a vast frozen mirror adrift in the black, returning the starlight all but untouched, a brilliant white coin spinning at the bottom of an immense and lightless well. What makes that surface shine so is a coating of frozen air. Eris is wrapped, as far as anyone can tell, in a shell of frozen methane and frozen nitrogen, the very gases that, on warmer worlds, drift invisible and weightless through the sky. Out there they have settled into pale, solid ice and laid themselves across the whole globe in a smooth, bright skin. Where the Earth wears oceans and forests and weather, Eris wears a single seamless layer of frost, unbroken from pole to pole, so even and so clean that astronomers can find no large dark markings anywhere upon it. It is a world dressed entirely in the frozen breath of a vanished atmosphere, gleaming beneath a sun far too distant to thaw it. And it is bitterly, almost unthinkably cold. The temperature across that frozen surface hovers somewhere around 240 degrees below zero on the Celsius scale, only a few dozen degrees above the absolute coldest temperature the universe permits, the point where even the trembling of atoms nearly ceases. At that chill, nitrogen and methane are no longer gases or liquids but hard, pale solids, as rigid as bedrock. Rubber would snap like glass. Air itself lies fallen and frozen across the ground. There is no human cold to set beside it, nothing in any winter ever endured on Earth that comes within reach. It is the deep, settled cold of a place that has been turned away from any real warmth for the whole of its long existence. This small frozen world carries a name from the oldest stories. Eris was the Greek goddess of strife and discord, the one who, in the myth, was left off the guest list of a wedding of the gods and arrived anyway, rolling a single golden apple into the hall, inscribed with the words for the fairest, and so igniting a quarrel that legend says led at last to the Trojan War. It is a fierce name for so still and silent a world, and yet it was chosen with a knowing wink, for the finding of this distant sphere of ice would stir up a great and lasting argument among astronomers on Earth, a dispute not about apples, but about the meaning of a single word and about which worlds may rightly be called planets at all. The argument it began went on to redraw the map of the solar system you may have learned as a child. When Eris was first found, it appeared to be larger than Pluto, the 9th planet that generations had counted as the last and smallest of the Sun's family. If Pluto deserved to be a planet, then surely this new, seemingly bigger world deserved it too. And if it did not, then why should Pluto? The question forced astronomers to do something they had somehow never quite done: to write down, in plain and careful words, exactly what a planet is. The answer they reached would quietly demote Pluto, lift the curtain on a whole new class of worlds, and leave the solar system feeling at once smaller and far stranger than it had before. Astronomers gathered in the late summer of 2006 to settle the matter, in a vote that drew the attention of the world. They decided that to be a full planet, a body must do 3 things. It must orbit the Sun, it must be massive enough that its own gravity has pulled it into a round shape, and it must have swept its orbital path clear of other sizable bodies, becoming the dominant object along its track. Eris meets the first 2 tests with ease. It circles the Sun, and it is beautifully round. But out in that crowded frozen region, it has not cleared its lane of the countless other icy bodies sharing it, and so Eris, along with Pluto, was placed in a brand new category, one that fits a world both round and small and travelling among many others, the Dwarf planet. That single decision turned out to matter more than anyone first guessed, and it widened the sky rather than narrowing it. Beyond the orbit of Neptune lies a vast cold reservoir of icy worlds, far more numerous than the 8 planets, and Eris stands among the largest and most distant of them all. By drawing the line where they did, astronomers were not so much shrinking the Sun's family as admitting how much of it they had only begun to see. A whole new realm of small frozen worlds, of which Eris became the unexpected herald. The word planet grew sharper, and the night sky beyond Neptune grew, in the very same stroke, immeasurably more crowded and more full of wonder. The team that found this world watched it carefully for a long while before they were sure of what they held. The discovery is credited to a group of astronomers working from a mountaintop observatory in California, led by Mike Brown, who had spent years scanning the outer dark for slow-moving specks of light. Eris first revealed itself not as a world, but as a faint mark on a photograph, a dim dot among uncounted stars, betraying its nature only by the way it crept, ever so slightly, from one image to the next across the nights. The stars stood fixed. This one wandered, just barely. The ancient telltale sign, known since antiquity, of a body belonging to our own sun rather than the deep and distant beyond. From that almost imperceptible shift, an entire world was drawn out of the blackness. The astronomers who found it gave it for a time a playful private nickname, before the formal name from myth was settled upon. Knowing among themselves what their discovery was about to do to Pluto's standing, they called the new world the Planet Killer, a half-joking title for the small bright thing that would, in the end, unmake the 9th planet and rewrite the textbooks. There is something almost tender in that. A silent ball of ice at the freezing rim of everything, utterly indifferent to the categories of distant minds, became the quiet cause of one of the liveliest debates in the history of astronomy simply by being noticed. It killed nothing at all. It only made people look more honestly at what was already there. Eris does not travel alone through all that emptiness. Circling it, faint and small, is a single moon, a little companion world given the name Dysnomia. In the old stories, Dysnomia was the daughter of Eris, the spirit of lawlessness, and so the pairing carries the family resemblance of myth out into the real dark. The moon is far smaller than Eris itself, a dim grey speck looping around the bright frozen sphere, completing one full orbit in about 16 days. From the surface of Eris, Dysnomia would hang in the black sky as a small dull circle, lit only by that distant pinprick of a sun, the single largest near thing in an otherwise empty heaven. Two bodies, bound by gravity, turning together at the bottom of the sun's deepest reach. That little moon proved far more useful than its faint glow would suggest, for it became the very instrument by which Eris was weighed. There is an old and elegant rule in astronomy. Watch how long a moon takes to circle its world, and how far out it rides, and from those two numbers alone the mass of the central body can be read with great precision. By tracking Dysnomia patiently through its 16-day loop, astronomers placed a weight upon Eris, learning not merely how wide it is, but how much matter it truly contains. A dim companion that might have seemed a mere curiosity became a kind of cosmic scale, and from its faithful circling the true heft of the Planet Killer was at last drawn out of the dark. And the answer that scale returned was a quiet surprise. Eris, it turned out, is more massive than Pluto, about 27 parts in 100 heavier, holding over a quarter again as much matter, even though the two worlds are very nearly the same size across. For a while, Eris was thought to be plainly larger than Pluto as well, but closer measurement has since shown the two are almost twins in width, with Pluto perhaps even a touch the broader. The difference lies hidden within. Eris packs more into nearly the same span, which makes it the heavier of the pair, and indeed the most massive dwarf planet yet known anywhere in the Sun's domain. Of all the small round worlds beyond Neptune, none yet found carries more weight than this distant ball of frozen air. Hold the two worlds side by side in the mind for a moment, almost the same size, and yet one quietly heavier than the other. It means that deep down, Eris must be built of slightly denser material, that beneath its bright skin of ice there lies proportionally more rock and metal than within its cousin. A handful of Eris would outweigh the same handful of Pluto. The brilliance of the surface, that pure white frost, conceals a heavier heart of stone, and there is a gentle lesson folded into it, the kind the cosmos seems fond of leaving for a wandering mind, that the two most massive of all the dwarf worlds are near twins in their reach across the sky, told apart not by how large they look, but only by how much they secretly hold. The path Eris follows around the Sun is not the near circle the inner planets trace, but a long, stretched, lopsided loop. At its closest, it sweeps inward to about 38 times the Earth's distance, roughly as near as Pluto ever comes. At its farthest, it swings out to nearly 98 times that distance, far into the freezing dark. So the world keeps no steady remove from the Sun. It falls inward for centuries, then climbs outward again for centuries more, breathing slowly in and out across an orbit so vast that a single year there would swallow many human lifetimes whole. To walk its full circuit even once would be to watch empires rise and rise again, all within the span it takes this one cold world to go around but a single time. That single circuit lasts something close to 557 of our years. A person born when Eris last passed a chosen point along its path would need to live more than 5 centuries to see it return there. When Eris last swept closest to the sun, the great cathedrals of Europe were still young, and much of the world's coastline had yet to be charted on any map. It will not draw closest again until a date more than 200 years beyond our own present. The world keeps a calendar so immense that the whole of recorded human history, every story ever set down, every city ever raised, would fit comfortably within only 3 or 4 of its long, slow years. Because the orbit is so stretched, the sunlight reaching Eris changes enormously across that immense year, and this works a strange seasonal magic upon its very air. When the world swings inward toward its nearest approach, the faint sun grows just barely strong enough to coax some of the surface ice to lift, the frozen methane and nitrogen warming only enough to pass straight from solid to vapour, wrapping the globe in a thin, cold, temporary atmosphere. Then, as Eris climbs back out toward the freezing dark, that thin air loses even the little warmth that raised it, and it does something no atmosphere on Earth has ever done in all our history. It freezes completely and falls. Picture that slow, soundless snowfall at the rim of the solar system. As Eris drifts back outward into the cold, its whole sky of thin gas begins to settle, molecule by molecule drifting downward and laying itself across the frozen ground as a fresh fall of nitrogen and methane snow. The atmosphere does not blow away or burn off, it simply collapses gently onto the surface, the air itself becoming weather, becoming snow, becoming part of the bright ice shell. For the greater part of its long year, Eris carries almost no atmosphere at all, only that frozen layer waiting on the ground, and then, centuries later, drawing near the sun once more, the snow lifts back into the sky, and the world breathes its thin air again. A planet that inhales and exhales its own atmosphere across spans of centuries. Such is the unhurried rhythm of this faraway place. It is partly this endless freezing and thawing that keeps the surface so dazzlingly white. Each time the atmosphere collapses and resettles, it lays down a fresh, clean coat of bright frost across the entire globe, covering over any darkening, any dust, any blemish that the long centuries might have brought. The world repaints itself, over and over, in pure white, every time it journeys out into the cold. Other distant icy bodies tend to darken and redden with age, their ancient ice is stained by the slow chemistry of starlight into rusty, ruddy tones. But Eris, by snowing its own sky back down upon itself again and again, stays forever fresh, forever gleaming, a world kept eternally young by the falling of its own frozen heaven. That reddening, which Eris escapes, is itself a quiet marvel worth pausing on. Out in the deep, cold, faint particles of light and radiation slowly work upon exposed methane ice over millions of years, breaking it down and forging darker, redder compounds, a kind of cosmic tanning that leaves many far worlds wearing dull rose and amber hues. Some of Pluto's broad plains carry exactly such tints, soft browns and pale reds where the ancient ice has weathered. Eris alone seems to defy it, scrubbing itself clean with every fresh snowfall, so that its face stays the brilliant white of untouched frost, while its cousins age into deeper colours. The same slow chemistry that darkens its neighbours is forever erased on Eris by the gentle return of its own sky. The realm where Eris lives carries a name that suits its restless history, the Scattered Disk. It is a vast, sparse outer territory beyond the more familiar ring of icy bodies that follows just past Neptune, a region where worlds ride on long, tilted, stretched-out orbits, flung there ages ago by the gravity of the giant planets and never coaxed back into tidy circles. Eris is among the grandest residents of this scattered realm, swinging on its great inclined loop far above and below the flat plane in which the major planets turn. To live in the scattered disk is to live as a kind of gentle exile, pushed out to the cold frontier in the solar system's distant youth, and left to wheel there, slow and bright and apart ever since. Eris does not even keep to the level plane the planets share. Its orbit leans steeply, tilted more than 40 degrees away from the flat sheet along which Earth and Jupiter and the rest travel. So while the major planets move almost as though laid upon a single great tabletop, Eris climbs high above that table and then plunges far beneath it, tracing a road no inner world has ever followed. Seen from far enough away, the 8 planets would seem to spin within a thin, bright disk, and Eris would cut across them at a slant, rising out of their plane and sinking below it, a lone traveller keeping to its own steep and solitary path through the dark. Down on that bright frozen surface, a day passes slowly and strangely. Eris turns on its axis about once every 26 hours, not far from the length of an earthly day, a small and almost homely coincidence in a place so alien. But the sky above that turning is nothing like any sky you have ever stood beneath. The sun rises as a single fierce point, no wider than the other stars, creeping across a black heaven that never brightens to blue, for there is too little air to scatter the light into colour. Day and night there are not a matter of brightness and darkness, but only of which patch of cold ice happens to face that small fierce spark of sunlight. The stars never go out. They burn, hard and steady, even at the height of noon. There would be no blue hour on Eris, no sunset colours, no soft gradient of dusk, because colour in a sky is born entirely of air. On Earth, the daytime heavens glow blue, and the evening burns red and gold because sunlight scatters through a thick blanket of gas, bending and spreading across the dome above. Eris has no such blanket for most of its long year. Its sky is simply black. Black at noon, black at midnight, black from edge to edge, pricked all over with the unwavering light of distant stars. The sun would hang in that blackness like a single, white-hot needle, casting its thin, pale light upon the frost, and all around it the crowded depth of the galaxy would shine on, undimmed by any daylight at all. The very ground you might imagine standing upon there is not soil or sand, but solid ice. Frozen gases pressed and packed across the eons into a pale crust as hard as rock. There are no oceans to lap at any shore, no rivers, no rain, no growing thing of any kind. There is no mud, no dust storm, no tide. The landscape, whatever shapes it may hold, is sculpted entirely from frozen air and frozen water, carved by nothing warmer than starlight across stretches of time too long to feel. It is a still life held at the lowest temperatures the solar system can offer, a frozen tableau scarcely altered in any way a human eye could notice, since long before the first ancestor of any living thing drew breath on Earth. And yet, for all its present stillness, this is a world with a violent and dramatic past written into its very orbit. The reason Eris rides so far out, on so tilted and stretched a path, is almost certainly that it was flung there, hurled outward in the solar system's chaotic youth by a close passage near the gravity of a giant planet, most likely Neptune, and sent wheeling into the scattered disk to wander ever after. The serene white sphere you picture turning quietly in the dark is in truth a castaway. It did not form where it now rides. It was thrown billions of years ago from a warmer and more crowded region out into the long cold exile of the deep, and it has been falling slowly around its great loop, undisturbed, through all the ages since. That distant exile means Eris has been visited by nothing and no one. No spacecraft from Earth has ever flown near it. No robotic eye has ever looked upon its surface from close at hand. Every image we hold of it is a reconstruction, pieced together from the faint glimmer it returns to our greatest telescopes. A few pale points of light teased into a portrait by patience and mathematics. We know its size, its weight, its brightness, the chemistry of its frost, and yet we have never truly beheld its face. It remains, in the most literal sense, a world imagined more than observed, a sphere we are confident is there, turning in the dark, though no living person has ever seen it as anything more than a single point of reflected starlight. To find that point of light in the first place demanded an extraordinary patience and a particular way of looking. Eris is so faint and so far that it does not leap from any single photograph. It can only be caught by setting images of the same patch of sky, taken on different nights, side by side, and watching for the one dim speck that has shifted its place against the fixed and distant stars. The astronomers who found it set both machines and eyes to that slow comparison, hunting the faint wanderer among a wilderness of motionless points. It is the same method that revealed the outer planets long ago, and it asked the same gift of its searchers, the willingness to gaze into the dark and notice the one small thing that, almost imperceptibly, has moved. Light is the only messenger that has ever crossed the gulf between Eris and the Earth, and it carries with it a quiet kind of time travel. Because that bright frozen world lies so far away, the faint glimmer we gather from it tonight is not new. It left the surface of Eris many hours before it reached any telescope here, so that whenever astronomers look upon it, they see not the world as it is in this instant, but the world as it was half a day in the past. The Eris on their screens always lags a little behind the true one. To look at anything so distant is to look backward in time, to receive a message sent long enough ago that the sender has already moved on, turning silently in a present we cannot yet glimpse. There is a deep silence wrapped around that whole far world, more complete than any silence ever known on Earth. Sound needs a medium, air or water or solid matter, to carry it, and for the greater part of its long orbit Eris has almost no air at all. A voice raised on that frozen surface would not travel, it would simply vanish at the lips, unheard. No thunder has ever rolled there, no breeze has ever sighed, no wave has ever broken. The loudest event imaginable would unfold in perfect absolute stillness. It is a world of pure silence turning soundlessly through a soundless dark, where even the settling of the snow makes no whisper as the sky comes down, flake by flake, onto the waiting ground. Out where Eris drifts, the sun has lost nearly all its power to warm, yet it has not quite lost the power to be seen as more than a star. From that distance, the sun would still outshine everything else in the heavens many hundreds of times over, far brighter than the full moon appears from Earth, and yet it would be too small to show any width at all, a single overwhelming point of white fire. It would be bright enough, perhaps, to read by in that thin cold light, and far too feeble to thaw so much as a fingertip of the frost. It is a peculiar in-between brilliance, a sun reduced to the size of a star, while remaining by an enormous margin the brightest star that frozen sky has ever held. Consider how little energy actually reaches that distant surface, and the cold begins to make a kind of sense. Sunlight spreads and thins with distance by a simple and unforgiving rule. Double your remove from the sun, and the light falling upon you drops to a quarter of its former strength. Eris rides so far out that the sunlight it receives is thousands of times fainter than the light that warms the Earth, a few thousandths of what bathes a summer field at midday. There is simply not enough warmth in that thin trickle to lift the temperature more than a hair above the cold of empty space itself. The sun shines on, faithful and bright, but its heat, spread across so vast a gulf, arrives all but spent. The brilliance of Eris in our telescopes once played a clever trick on the very astronomers who found it, and the trick reveals something lovely about the world. Because its surface is so extraordinarily reflective, Eris returns far more light than a darker world of the same size would, which means that, for a while, it could be mistaken for being larger than it truly is. A small, very bright mirror and a large, dull stone may shine with precisely the same glimmer from far away. It took careful work to untangle the two, to learn that Eris was not so much enormous as it was simply astonishingly bright. Its dazzle outran its size. The world announced itself by shining far above its station, a small thing wearing the gleam of a giant. Far out at the cold frontier, time itself seems to move at a different pace, slowed by the sheer scale of everything. Eris creeps along its orbit at only a few kilometers each second, a stately crawl beside the swift inner planets, which race around the sun many times faster. The farther a world rides from its star, the more leisurely its march, for the sun's pull grows gentle with distance and asks less haste of the bodies it holds. So Eris moves through space with a slowness to match its frozen calm, drifting along its enormous loop at a pace that would take more than 5 centuries to carry it once around, the most unhurried traveller in the whole of the sun's family. It is worth dwelling on just how dark the daytime sky of Eris truly is, for it overturns everything the word day usually means. On Earth, day is light and night is dark, and the difference is plain to any eye. On Eris there is no such contrast. The sun crosses the heavens as a tiny burning point, but it never floods them with brightness, never paints the air with colour, never washes out the stars. So even at the height of its long, slow day, the sky above Eris stays as black as the deepest country midnight, scattered with the steady silver of distant suns, while one of those points burns brighter than all the rest. Day there is not the banishing of the stars, but only a faint white spark joining them. The chemistry of that frozen surface holds a quiet beauty when you consider what it is made of. The bright shell wrapping Eris is built largely of methane ice, the same simple molecule that, far closer to the sun, exists only as an unseen gas, and that on certain warmer moons gathers into rivers and falls as rain. Out at the freezing rim of everything, that very compound has hardened into pale solid frost and spread itself across an entire world. There are hints of frozen nitrogen there as well, the same gas that makes up most of the air you're breathing in this very moment. To stand on Eris would be to stand upon a frozen version of the sky itself, the breath of warmer worlds, fallen solid and bright in the deep outer cold. Eris helped reveal that the solar system does not simply end at Neptune, but trails off into a vast and gentle frontier. Beyond the 8 planets lies not empty void, but a wide, sparse population of frozen worlds, scattered across enormous distances, of which Eris is among the largest and most far-flung. Before its discovery, the outer dark was thought all but vacant past Pluto's lonely orbit. Eris, and the search that found it, helped show that Pluto had never been alone out there, that it was merely the first glimpsed member of a whole crowded company of icy bodies, stretching outward far past anything earlier astronomers had charted. The map of the sun's domain quietly doubled, and then doubled again, as that frozen frontier came into view. There is something steadying in the thought of how undisturbed that distant world has been. While the inner solar system churned with collisions and upheavals, while worlds were born and shattered and remade, Eris has ridden its quiet orbit at the cold edge largely untouched. Out there, encounters are rare, for the bodies are few and the distances between them immense. A world in the scattered disk might wheel for hundreds of millions of years without ever passing near another of any size. So Eris turns in a kind of deep solitude, a hermit world, keeping to itself in the great outer quiet, its bright face unmarred, its long centuries passing in an almost perfect peace. Even the way astronomers first referred to it carries a trace of its strange beginnings. For a while after it was found, Eris had no proper name at all, only a string of letters and numbers, the temporary designation given to any newly spotted body until its nature is understood. For a time it also went by an informal nickname, drawn from a popular story, before the formal name from Greek myth was settled upon. There is a tender ordinariness in that, a reminder that even the grandest cosmic discoveries begin as small marks in a logbook, a faint dot circled on a photograph, a working title scribbled in the margin while the astronomers wait to learn what, exactly, they have found turning in the dark. The discovery arrived at a particular moment in history, when the tools to find such faint and distant things had only just grown sharp enough. For most of the 20th century, a world so dim and so far simply could not have been detected. It lay below the reach of the instruments of the age. Only with the coming of sensitive electronic detectors and large patient automated surveys of the sky could the faint glimmer of Eris finally be teased out of the black. In a sense, the world had been waiting there all along, turning quietly for billions of years, and it revealed itself to us only in the brief instant of history when human eyes, aided by glass and silicon, had at last become keen enough to notice. Far from the sun as it is, Eris would offer the strangest of horizons to anyone who could somehow stand upon it. The land would stretch away pale and frozen beneath a black sky, lit by a sun no larger than a brilliant star, with the dim grey circle of its moon hanging silent overhead. There would be no warmth on the skin, no breeze, no sound, no scent, no movement anywhere. Only the slow, almost imperceptible turning of the stars as the world rotated beneath them, once every 26 hours. It would be a landscape of utter stillness and almost unbearable clarity, every star sharp as a chip of ice, the whole crowded river of the galaxy spilled across a sky that never, ever brightens into day. The story of how that distant ice was identified is itself a small marvel of patient science. Astronomers cannot fly out and sample the surface of Eris. Instead, they read its composition from afar, by carefully spreading the faint light it reflects into all its component colours and searching for the particular fingerprints that different ices leave upon that light. Methane ice absorbs certain colours and not others, leaving a telltale pattern. Frozen nitrogen leaves a signature of its own. By studying which colours are missing from the glimmer of Eris, scientists have learned what its frozen surface is made of, reading the chemistry of a world they will likely never touch, in the faint light it casts back across more than half a day's journey of empty space. It is humbling to consider that nearly everything known about Eris has been drawn from so little, a few faint points of light gathered over years by instruments straining at the very limit of their power. Its size, its weight, its brightness, its frozen chemistry, the looping shape of its orbit, the small moon at its side, all of it reconstructed from a glimmer most eyes could never even detect. There is a quiet triumph in that, the way a whole world can be conjured from a scattering of photons and a great deal of careful thought. Eris reveals how much the mind can learn about a place it has never been, simply by attending closely and patiently to the faintest trace of light. The brightness of the world carries one more gentle consequence. Despite its staggering distance, it is among the more findable of the far worlds, precisely because it shines so well. A darker body of the same size lurking at the same remove would be far harder to catch, swallowed by the black, too dim to register. But the pale ice of Eris throws back so much of the faint sunlight that it punches well above its weight in the eyepiece, a small thing made visible by sheer reflectiveness. In a sense, Eris was bright enough to be discovered at all only because it is cold enough to keep refreezing its own clean white skin. Its visibility is a gift of its frost, a world that can be seen because it is forever snowing. There is a particular wonder in the sheer remoteness of dysnomia, that small moon looping around its bright world in the deep dark. From the surface of Eris, it would be the single largest object in the entire sky, save for the distant spark of the sun, a faint grey circle, lit only by that thin starlight, drifting slowly through a field of motionless stars and completing its journey every 16 days. Two bound worlds, turning together at the very floor of the sun's domain, keeping one another a kind of silent company across billions of miles of emptiness. In all that vast and lonely dark, Eris is not entirely without a companion. It has, at the very least, this one small faithful moon. The names given to that pair come down to us threaded with old meaning. Eris, the goddess of strife, and Dysnomia, in the old telling her daughter, the spirit of lawlessness, a mother and child from myth, set to circle each other forever at the rim of the real. There is a fittingness in it that runs deeper than mere poetry. The finding of this world did, after all, sow a great and lasting discord among astronomers, just as its namesake sowed discord among the gods. And in choosing to name its moon for the goddess's own daughter, those who catalogued it wove a quiet thread of family into the cold, binding the two frozen bodies together not by gravity alone, but by story. Consider for a moment the sheer scale of the journey light must make to bring Eris to us. The faint glimmer that reveals it sets out from that frozen surface and races across the dark at the fastest speed the universe allows, and still it takes the better part of a half-day to arrive. In that same span, light could cross the distance from the Earth to the Moon hundreds upon hundreds of times over. The gulf between us and Eris is so wide that our swiftest messenger, which crosses a room in a flicker too brief to feel, needs hours to traverse it. To picture that distance honestly is to feel the mind stretch and grow quiet, reaching toward a remoteness it can name but never truly hold. The orbit is so vast that it carries the world through regions of the solar system almost no human instrument has ever closely examined. As it swings outward toward its farthest point, Eris travels into a part of space so distant and so empty that nothing of ours has ever been there to greet it, a realm beyond the reach of every spacecraft ever launched, mapped only in the faintest outline. Out at that far edge, the sun shrinks to its smallest and dimmest, the cold deepens to its most profound, and the world drifts at its most utterly alone. And then, slowly, over the span of centuries it begins the long fall back inward again, toward the faint warmth and the thin returning air. It is strange and lovely to realise that Eris was, in all likelihood, born much closer to the sun than where it now resides. The icy worlds of the outer solar system are thought to have taken shape in a warmer, more crowded region long ago, only to be scattered outward by the gravity of the migrating giant planets during the system's tumultuous youth. So the frozen exile we see today began life as a near neighbour of bodies that now lie far inward, and was flung to the cold frontier in an age before any life stirred on Earth. The serene distance of Eris is not where it was made, but where it was sent, a quiet reminder that even the most settled-seeming things may have travelled a long and dramatic road to reach their stillness. There is a particular kind of peace in the thought that Eris will go on exactly as it is, long after everything familiar has changed. Its slow orbit, its bright frost, its silent moon, its breathing atmosphere of snow, all of it will continue, undisturbed, for billions of years yet to come, indifferent to anything that happens on the small warm world from which it was found. Whatever rises and falls here, that distant sphere will keep its turning. There is no comfort to be wrung from it, and no threat either. It simply endures, far beyond reach, a fixed and frozen calm at the edge of everything. And somehow, the knowing that it is out there, wheeling on, asks nothing of you at all. To grasp how far the world truly lies, set it against the journeys we have already made. The most distant spacecraft humanity has ever sent into the dark, launched generations ago and still racing outward, took decades to reach the edge of the planet's realm. Even those swift travellers, moving far faster than any rocket could carry a person, would need a great many more years yet to cross the gulf to where Eris now drifts. No human-made object has ever gone so far. The world sits in a part of space that our fastest machines have only begun to approach after lifetimes of flight, a measure, in patient years and miles, of just how deep into the dark this frozen sphere has wandered. The light of distant stars falls on Eris exactly as it falls on Earth, but with one striking difference. There, the stars have no rival. On Earth, the brilliance of the sun and the glow of our thick blue sky drown the stars out for half of every day. On Eris, the sun is too small and the sky too airless to hide them, so the stars shine on without interruption, by day and by night alike, in a heaven that never brightens. To stand there would be to stand always beneath the full depth of the galaxy, every constellation sharp and steady, the soft band of the Milky Way arching overhead at noon and midnight both. an unbroken view of the cosmos that no clear night on Earth has ever quite matched. The discovery quietly changed how astronomers think about the boundaries of the solar system itself. Before it, the outer limit of the planets felt reasonably settled, a known edge just past Neptune and Pluto. Eris pushed that sense of an edge far outward, into a realm of stretched and tilted orbits reaching toward distances that had scarcely been imagined as holding worlds at all. It revealed that the Sun's family does not stop neatly where the textbooks once said, but trails off gradually into an immense and thinly peopled frontier, of which Eris is one of the most distant known members. The solar system, it turned out, had a far longer and stranger tale than anyone had supposed. Think of how slowly even the swiftest news travels across such a distance. If, in some impossible moment, a great flash were to bloom on Eris right now, the soonest any eye on Earth could witness it would be many hours from now, for the light bearing that event would still be in transit, crossing the dark between. And were you somehow to send a signal back, it would take just as long to arrive. A simple exchange, a question, and its answer would consume the better part of a full day in the crossing alone. Distance out there is also a kind of time. To reach toward Eris is to reach not only across an immense gulf of space, but backward and forward across hours that light itself must spend in the dark. The frozen world keeps no weather in the way the Earth knows weather, and yet it is not entirely changeless. Across its long, slow year, as it nears the sun and then retreats again, the thin atmosphere lifts and falls, the frost sublimes and resettles, the surface very slowly renews its bright white coat. These are changes measured not in hours or seasons, but in centuries, a kind of weather so gradual that no single moment could ever reveal it, unfolding across stretches of time longer than all of recorded history. To watch Eris change would require a patience beyond any single life, a vigil kept across 500 years. And yet change it does, in its own glacial rhythm, breathing its atmosphere in and out across the ages. There is a quiet symmetry between Eris and the air in your own lungs. The nitrogen frozen across its bright surface is the very same element that fills most of the atmosphere you're breathing as you rest. The most common gas in the air of Earth, here turned to pale, solid ice at the bottom of the dark. The same atoms that, warm and weightless, ride in and out of every breath you take lie frozen and still across a world billions of miles away. It is a gentle thread of kinship running between the familiar and the unimaginably remote. The breath of Earth and the frost of Eris, made of the same simple stuff, separated only by an almost unthinkable gulf of cold and distance. The story of Eris is in part the story of how patiently the outer dark gives up its secrets. For years the astronomers searched, setting image against image, watching for the faint shift of a single distant point against the fixed stars. And for years the dark held its silence. Then, on a particular set of photographs, the wanderer appeared at last, dim and slow, and almost lost among the multitude. The discovery was not a sudden flash of revelation, but the fruit of long looking, of returning again and again to the same dark sky, and asking it, gently, to show what it held. The cold frontier does not surrender its worlds easily. It yields them only to those willing to wait, and watch, and look once more. It is a curious thought that Eris, for all its remoteness, is bound to the very same sun that warms your face on a summer afternoon. The star that lights your days and ripens the fruit on the trees also holds this frozen sphere in its grip, across a distance so vast that its light arrives there all but spent. One sun, reaching from the warm inner worlds out to the freezing edge of everything, gathering them all into a single family. The light that feels golden and generous here is the same light that gleams, thin and pale, upon the frost of Eris. It is the same hand, opened wide enough to hold both the warmth of a meadow and the deep cold of a world adrift at the edge of everything. The roundness of Eris is itself a quiet testament to the patient work of gravity. A small body, a boulder, an asteroid, may hold any jagged, irregular shape it pleases, for its feeble gravity is far too weak to reshape it. But a world as large as Eris cannot. Its own gravity, pulling inward from every direction at once, has slowly drawn its mass into a smooth sphere across the ages, smoothing away any great peaks or hollows, pressing the whole world toward the roundest form that matter can take. To be round, for a world, is to have crossed a threshold of size and gravity, to have grown massive enough that its own weight has gently sculpted it into a ball. Eris wears that roundness as a mark of its bulk, a sphere shaped by nothing but its own slow inward pull. There is a deep stillness in imagining the surface of Eris under starlight, with no sun risen to crowd the heavens. The pale ice would stretch away in every direction, lit only by the faint silver of countless distant stars and the dim glow of its moon. The frost would gleam softly in that light, the way snow gleams beneath a clear winter sky, every feature edged in the faintest shine. There would be no warmth, no sound, no motion, but the slow wheel of the stars overhead. It would be a scene of perfect repose, holding its frozen breath at the rim of everything, a stillness so complete that it has scarcely been disturbed in all the long ages since the world was young. The naming of Eris followed a tradition that runs deep through astronomy, the use of old myth to christen new worlds. The planets themselves bear the names of ancient gods, and the bodies of the outer dark have been given names drawn from the myths of many peoples. Eris took the name of the Greek goddess of discord, a choice that suited both the world's role in stirring up debate and the long custom of reaching back to the oldest stories for the names of the newest finds. There is a continuity in that, a thread linking the most modern of discoveries to the most ancient of tales, so that even a world found by silicon and glass carries, in its very name, the echo of a story told around fires thousands of years ago. It is worth lingering on just how faint Eris appears from Earth, how nearly invisible. Even through a powerful telescope, it shows itself as no more than a dim point of light, indistinguishable at a glance from the countless faint stars surrounding it. It is far too distant to reveal any disk, any surface, any feature, only a single faint glimmer, betraying its true nature solely by its slow drift across the nights. To find it, and to know it for a world rather than a star, demanded both fine instruments and finer patience. And yet from that single faint point, astronomers have drawn out an entire world, its size, its weight, its frost, its moon, its looping path, proof of how much can be learned from how little, when the looking is careful enough. The cold of Eris is so profound that it preserves the world almost perfectly, holding it in a kind of deep suspension. At temperatures that low, chemistry slows to a crawl. The slow reactions that age and darken surfaces elsewhere proceed at a glacial pace, if at all. So the frozen face of Eris changes only with extraordinary slowness, kept fresh and bright not only by its falling snow, but by the sheer chill that very nearly halts all change. It is a world held in cold storage at the edge of the solar system, scarcely altered across billions of years, a frozen record of the deep outer dark, preserved by the very cold that makes it so forbidding, waiting, perhaps, to be read by some future eye. The orbit reaches so far that, at its most distant, the world drifts nearly to the threshold of interstellar space, though never quite across it. At its farthest point it lies almost 100 times the Earth's distance from the Sun, out where the Sun's influence grows thin and the cold of the wider galaxy begins to make itself felt, and yet, even there, Eris remains firmly bound to the Sun, falling along its great loop, destined to swing back inward across the coming centuries. It rides the very outer edge of the Sun's grip, as far as a body may wander and still belong, a frontier world, balanced between the warmth of home and the immense dark beyond, forever leaning toward the edge but never quite letting go. There is something profoundly calming in the slowness of Eris, in the sheer, unhurried scale of its existence. While the inner worlds race around the Sun in months or years, Eris needs over 500 to complete a single circuit, creeping along its path so gradually that its motion is all but imperceptible from one night to the next. It is a world that does nothing quickly. Its seasons unfold across hundreds of years. Its atmosphere freezes and thaws across those same vast spans. Its day, though near our own in length, turns beneath a sky that scarcely seems to move. To contemplate Eris is to step into a slower current of time, where centuries pass like seasons, and a single year outlasts every human story ever told. Eris belongs to a family of distant icy worlds that, together, have reshaped our picture of the sun's domain. It is one of several large round bodies discovered beyond Neptune in recent decades, each a frozen sphere on a long and lonely orbit, each adding to the realization that the outer solar system is far richer and more populous than once believed. Among them are worlds named for creation gods and island deities, some bright like Eris, some dim and red, some with moons of their own. Together they form a kind of frozen archipelago at the rim of everything, scattered islands of ice, separated by immense gulfs of dark, each turning in its own slow solitude. The discovery of Eris threw open a window onto that archipelago, revealing a whole new province of the sun's realm that earlier generations never knew was there. To stand on Eris, if such a thing were possible, would be to feel almost no weight at all. Its gravity is far gentler than Earth's, a small fraction of the pull you feel beneath your feet right now, so a person there would weigh only a little, able to leap great heights and float slowly back down to the frost. A pebble dropped would fall with a dreamlike laziness. A single step would carry far. It would be a world of lightness as well as cold, where the pull of the ground is faint and the body feels nearly free. There is a strange gentleness in that. The thought of moving across that bright frozen plain with the weightlessness of a slow-falling feather, beneath a black sky pricked with stars. The light reflected from Eris is so pure and so bright that, in a sense, the world wears the cleanest white in the solar system. Few other bodies of any size shine back so much of the light that falls upon them. Most are darkened by dust, by rock, by the slow staining of the ages. But Eris, forever resurfacing itself in fresh fallen frost, keeps a face nearly as bright as new snow, brighter, surface for surface, than almost any other world the sun illuminates. It is the pale jewel of the outer dark, a small sphere of brilliant white set against the blackness, gleaming with a purity no warmer, dustier world can match. Its beauty is the beauty of frost untouched, of snow no foot has ever crossed. The discovery carried with it a humbling reminder of how recently the true shape of our own solar system has come into view. For all the centuries astronomers have studied the sky, the existence of this large, bright, distant world went entirely unsuspected until our own era. It had been turning out there all along, through the rise and fall of every civilization, unseen, and only in the past few decades did human eyes grow sharp enough to find it. There is a lesson in that, gentle and clear, that the cosmos still keeps discoveries close, that even our own neighbourhood is not yet fully mapped, and that the dark beyond the planets may yet hold worlds we have not so much as glimpsed. Picture once more that slow snowfall, the most peaceful weather anywhere the sun's light falls. As Eris drifts outward, its thin atmosphere of nitrogen and methane gradually cools past the point where it can stay a gas, and settles, molecule by molecule, onto the frozen ground, a soundless fall of bright snow across the whole face of the world. There is no wind to blow it sideways, no storm to whip it into drifts. It simply descends evenly and gently in the dark. And across centuries, the entire sky of the world comes down to rest upon the surface, until almost no air remains aloft at all. It is a snowfall measured not in hours but in lifetimes, the slowest, stillest, most patient weather in all the sun's reach. The story of Eris reminds us too that even the act of naming can carry a quiet wit. Those who found the world chose, for its formal name, the goddess of discord, a knowing nod to the great argument the discovery had stirred among astronomers over the meaning of the word planet. And for its moon they chose Dysnomia, the goddess's daughter, the spirit of lawlessness, threading the family of myth out into the real dark. There is a gentle humour in it, a sense of astronomers smiling at their own debates even as they catalogued the very cause of them. The names fit not only the old stories but the human story of the discovery itself, a quarrel settled at last written into the heavens. There is a deep tranquillity in the constancy of Eris, in the way it simply persists. Through all the changes of the inner worlds, through every storm and season and upheaval on the warm planets near the sun, that distant frozen sphere holds steady, turning at its own slow pace, wearing its bright frost, keeping its small moon close. It does not react, does not hurry, does not alter in any way a single lifetime could perceive. It abides. And there is a kind of rest to be found in that thought alone, that somewhere far out in the dark, beyond all reach and all disturbance, a small white world is turning exactly as it always has, and exactly as it always will, asking nothing, needing nothing, simply being what it is. The faint circle of Dysnomia, the moon, would be a strange and lovely sight from the surface of Eris. Far smaller and dimmer than the moon you know from Earth, it would show as a pale grey disk against the blackness, lit only by the thin light of that far bright spark, drifting slowly through its 16-day round among the unmoving stars. There would be no bright moonlit nights there, no silver flood across the frost, only a faint grey glow, soft and far, the single largest thing in a sky otherwise filled with sharp and tiny stars. And yet it would be a companion, a familiar shape returning faithfully again and again, a small steady presence in the immense and lonely dark. The way astronomers measure the size of so distant a world is a marvel of indirect cleverness. Eris is far too small and far too remote to show any disk, even in the greatest telescopes. It appears only as a point, so its width is reckoned by subtler means, by watching, on the rare occasions it occurs, as it passes directly in front of a distant star, briefly blocking the star's light and timing exactly how long that little eclipse lasts. From the length of that fleeting shadow and the known speed of the world along its orbit, the diameter of Eris can be calculated with surprising precision. It is a measurement drawn from a moment of darkness, the brief winking out of a star behind a frozen world, read like a signal across billions of miles. It is a gentle wonder that the surface of Eris may, in places, be smooth almost beyond imagining. With no liquid water, no flowing rivers, no plates grinding and shifting beneath the crust, and only the slow resurfacing of falling frost to shape it, the world may wear a face of remarkable evenness. A bright plain stretching unbroken toward a black horizon, scarcely interrupted by hill or hollow. Whatever ancient features it may hold lie buried, perhaps, beneath layer upon layer of fresh fallen snow, smoothed over across the eons. To imagine standing there is to imagine a vast and level field of brilliant white, flat and silent, reaching away in every direction beneath an unblinking field of stars. The orbit of Eris is so steeply inclined that, could you watch the solar system from afar, the world would seem to belong to a different plane of being than the planets. While Earth and its siblings trace their paths upon a single broad and level sheet, Eris climbs high above that sheet and dives far below it, leaning more than 40 degrees from the common plane. It is as though the planets travel along a flat road, and Eris follows a separate path crossing it at a steep angle, rising and falling through the heights and depths the planets never visit. This sharp tilt is a relic of its violent past, a sign of the great gravitational shove that flung it out of the level lane and into its own lonely slanted orbit long ago. The fact that Eris is heavier than Pluto, despite being so similar in size, tells a quiet story about what lies beneath its bright skin. To hold more matter within nearly the same space, Eris must be built of denser stuff, proportionally more rock and metal, less light ice, packed into its core. So the world is not all frost. Beneath its brilliant frozen shell lies a heavier heart of stone, a dense interior that lends it its surprising weight. The gleaming white surface, pure as snow, conceals a body of rock at its centre. It is a reminder that what a world shows on the outside may say little of what it holds within, that beneath the brightest, lightest seeming face there may lie a quiet, weighty solidity. There is a soft poetry in the thought that Eris breathes, however slowly. For most of its long orbit it holds its breath, its atmosphere frozen to the ground, the world wrapped in a still and airless silence. Then, as it nears the sun across the slow centuries, that frozen air lifts once more, and the world exhales a thin atmosphere into its black sky. And as it retreats again, it inhales, the air settling back down as snow. One breath of Eris spans hundreds of years. It is the slowest breathing in the solar system, a rhythm so vast that no living thing could ever witness a single full cycle, and yet a rhythm all the same, a frozen world, gently breathing its own sky in and out across the ages. To consider Eris is to be reminded of the sheer reach of the sun's family. From the warm inner worlds baked close to the fire all the way out to this frozen sphere riding nearly 100 times farther, the sun holds them all, across a span of distance almost too great to picture. Eris marks one of the far outposts of that domain, a sentinel at the cold edge, bound to the same star as the Earth, yet living in a world of such different scale and chill that the two seem scarcely to belong to the same system at all. And yet they do. The same gravity that holds you to your chair holds Eris to its orbit, reaching across billions of miles to keep that distant world turning in its slow and faithful round. The light by which we know Eris is old by the time it reaches us, and there is a quiet beauty in that delay. When astronomers gather the faint glimmer of the world tonight, they see it not as it is in this instant, but as it was hours ago, for the light has spent that long crossing the dark between. The Eris on the screen is always a little out of date, a portrait of a past the world has already left behind as it turns. To look at it is to receive a message from across an enormous gulf of space and time, dispatched so long before its arrival that its maker has already turned away into a present we cannot reach. The whole far dark is full of such delayed light, old news from distant worlds, arriving gently at the speed of the universe. There is a stillness at the heart of Eris that feels almost like a kind of patience. The world has been wheeling out there for billions of years, through the whole long span of Earth's own history and far beyond, asking nothing, changing little, simply abiding at the cold frontier. It does not strain toward the sun or flee from it. It follows its great slow loop with a calm no upheaval has ever broken. To picture it is to picture something utterly at peace with its own remoteness, a frozen world that has made its home at the edge of everything, and rests there, bright and silent, content in its distance. There is a lesson in that stillness, gentle and unspoken, for any restless mind. The discovery stands as a quiet monument to human curiosity, to the simple urge to look farther into the dark. No practical need drove the search that found it. No one expected to gain anything but knowledge from charting the faint motions of the outer worlds. And yet the looking went on, year after patient year, until a new world emerged from the blackness. A world that has taught us about the boundaries of our solar system, the nature of distant ice, the meaning of the word planet itself. It is a reminder that the impulse to explore, to map the unknown for the sheer wonder of knowing, has a way of enlarging the world in ways no one could have foreseen, one faint point of light at a time. The bright frost of Eris, gleaming under that distant star, would shine with a clarity unlike anything on Earth. Without an atmosphere to soften or scatter the light, every surface would be sharply lit and sharply shadowed, the boundary between sunlit frost and dark sky as crisp as a drawn line. The brilliant white of the ice would meet the absolute black of space with no gradient between, no haze, no glow at the horizon. It would be a vista of stark and perfect contrast, pure white below, pure black above, and the small, fierce point of the sun burning between them. Such clarity exists nowhere on a world with air. It belongs only to the airless, frozen places at the far edge of the light. The stretched orbit means the world spends most of its long year far from the sun, out in the deepest cold. Because it lingers so long near its farthest point and passes its closest only briefly, the great majority of its centuries unfold in the freezing dark, with its atmosphere fallen to snow and its surface near the lowest temperatures the sun's realm can offer. The brief, slightly warmer seasons near the sun are the exception, not the rule. Eris is, by the very shape of its path, a creature of the deep cold, drawn close to the warmth only now and then, for a fleeting span, before climbing back out into the long, dark, frozen majority of its endless year. It is a thought of quiet grandeur that Eris was, for a time, taken to be possibly the largest known body in the solar system beyond Neptune, the great frozen prize at the rim of the dark, seemingly outranking even Pluto. Closer study has since shown it to be a near twin of Pluto in width, with Pluto perhaps very slightly broader, though Eris remains the heavier of the two. But for a while, in the first flush of its finding, it wore the crown of the largest distant world, a small bright sphere that had announced itself by shining so well it seemed even grander than the truth. There is something endearing in that brief overestimation, a world that dazzled its discoverers into thinking it larger than it was. The temperature of Eris is so low that even the most familiar substances would behave in unfamiliar ways. Water, on that frozen surface, is not a liquid or a vapour but a rock-hard solid, as unyielding as granite, forming part of the very bedrock of the world. The gases that fill the air of Earth lie fallen and frozen on the ground. There is no warmth anywhere to coax any of it into motion. To stand there would be to stand in a cold so deep that the ordinary rules of matter are rewritten, where ice is the stone, where air is the snow, where the whole world is built from substances we know only in their warm and weightless forms. It is a place that turns the familiar inside out, simply by being cold enough. There is a faint and lovely irony in the name Eris, the goddess of strife, given to so serene a world. Nothing about the frozen sphere itself is discordant. It turns in perfect silence and perfect peace, the very picture of cosmic calm. The strife it caused was entirely among the astronomers who found it and argued over its meaning, a quarrel on Earth, not in the heavens. The world itself remained, throughout, utterly tranquil, indifferent to the debate raging across billions of miles about how it ought to be classified. And so the name carries a gentle double meaning, a goddess of discord lending her title to one of the most serene and silent objects in all the sun's domain. To imagine the view from Eris is to imagine a sky of breathtaking depth and stillness. With no air to scatter the starlight, the heavens there are not the soft glowing dome of an earthly night, but a sharp and bottomless black, scattered with stars that do not twinkle but burn steadily, each a fixed and brilliant point. The Milky Way would arch across that blackness in a clear unbroken band, far brighter and more detailed than any view from the surface of Earth, undimmed by atmosphere or city light. And amid all that crowded splendour, the sun would hang as the single brightest star, fierce and small. It would be perhaps the clearest view of the cosmos available anywhere a person could stand, a window onto the universe, kept perfectly clean by the cold and the dark. The mass of Eris was, in a sense, weighed by patience, by the long and careful tracking of its small moon through orbit after orbit. Each circuit of dysnomia, timed and measured, sharpened the precision of the answer, until astronomers could state with confidence how much matter the bright world holds. It is a measurement gathered not in a single observation but across many, the moon faithfully circling, the watchers faithfully watching, until the world surrendered the secret of its weight. There is a quiet elegance to that method, the way a distant body can be set upon a scale built entirely of light and time and the steady turning of a moon. the heft of a frozen sphere read from the dance of its companion. The realm of Eris is so sparsely populated that vast stretches of it hold nothing at all, only emptiness and the faint distant light of the stars. Out in the scattered disk, the few icy worlds are parted by gulfs so immense that one might travel for ages without meeting another body of any size. Eris drifts through that great emptiness in near-perfect solitude, its small moon its only close companion, the next sizable world unimaginably far away. It is a solitude almost beyond conceiving, a single bright sphere and its faint moon, alone together in a darkness so wide and so empty that the very idea of neighbours begins to lose meaning. And yet, there is no loneliness in it, only the deep, untroubled quiet of a world at peace with its own remoteness. Consider the patience encoded in the orbit of Eris, the way it falls inward and climbs outward across spans of centuries. From its closest approach to the sun to its farthest retreat, and home again, the world completes one great breath every 557 years. A human watcher could observe only the tiniest fraction of that journey in a lifetime, a few faint steps along an enormous path. To witness even a single full circuit would require generations of watchers, each passing the vigil to the next across the centuries. The orbit is a clock too vast for any one life to read, marking time in units longer than the memory of nations, turning slowly, faithfully in the dark. There is something deeply restful in the thought of the falling snow of Eris, the gentlest event in all the sun's reach. No violence attends it, no storm, no upheaval, only the slow, even settling of frozen air onto frozen ground, flake by flake, across the whole face of the world, in perfect silence and perfect calm. It is weather without wind, snow without sound, a soft white descent in the dark that asks nothing and disturbs nothing. To picture it is to feel the mind grow quiet, to imagine that slow fall of pale crystals across a sleeping world at the edge of everything. It is the kind of snowfall one might dream of, endless, soundless, utterly serene, drifting down through the long cold night of a world that has all the time in the universe. Eris reminds us too how much the meaning of a single word can matter. The discovery of this distant sphere forced astronomers to define at last what a planet truly is, and that definition, once written, changed the way the whole solar system is described and taught. A word that had seemed perfectly clear for centuries turned out to need careful pinning down, and the pinning down rippled outward through every textbook and classroom. There is a gentle wonder in that a faint point of light at the freezing rim of the dark could send the meaning of a familiar word into careful reconsideration, and in so doing, reshape how we picture the very arrangement of the sun's family of worlds. The brightness of Eris is a kind of paradox, a brilliance born of the most extreme cold. It is precisely because the world is so frigid that its atmosphere keeps freezing and refreezing onto the surface, laying down fresh white frost again and again, and it is that fresh frost which makes Eris shine so purely. A warmer world would lose its bright coat. This one renews it endlessly through the very cold that defines it. So the dazzle of Eris and the chill of Eris are one and the same thing, two faces of a single truth. The world shines because it freezes. Its brilliance is the gleam of cold itself, made visible far out in the lightless deep. To think of Eris is to be reminded of the long reach of time and of how briefly we have known it. That frozen sphere has been keeping its silent round for billions of years, since long before the Earth wore oceans or air, since long before any living thing existed to wonder about the sky. And in all that vast expanse of time, it has been known to us for only the briefest sliver, a handful of years against billions. There is a humility in that, and a wonder too, that a world so ancient should have entered human awareness so recently, and that its long, slow, frozen existence should have gone on, unseen and unsuspected, through the entire history of life on Earth until just now. Out at the cold frontier, The sun keeps its hold but loosens its grip, and Eris feels that loosening in the slowness of its march. The farther a world rides, the weaker the pull that guides it, and so the more gently it moves along its path. Eris, riding the outermost margin of all the sun still governs, creeps along its orbit at a pace so unhurried it seems almost to drift rather than to travel. A slow few miles with every second, a measured crawl across the immense dark. It is held, but only just, bound, but loosely, guided by a hand grown faint with distance. And in that gentle, distant grip it moves with a calm befitting its frozen face, the slowest and most peaceful of all the sun's far children. The discovery was, in the end, a triumph of looking where others had not thought to look. The outer dark had long been assumed all but empty past Pluto, a void scarcely worth scanning. But a few patient astronomers turned their instruments toward that supposed emptiness anyway, and found it was not empty at all, that it held worlds, large and bright and waiting, of which Eris was the grandest yet seen. There is encouragement in that, a reminder that the places thought to hold nothing may hold the most, that the dark dismissed as barren may be quietly full. The frozen frontier rewarded those who looked, with a whole new world and a whole new realm to explore. Picture the slow turning of Eris beneath its unmoving sky. One rotation every 26 hours, the stars wheeling almost imperceptibly overhead. The world spins at a pace nearly matching the rhythm of an earthly day, and yet the sky above it tells an utterly different story. Black at all hours, scattered with steady stars, ruled by a sun too small to brighten it. To stand there through one rotation would be to watch the same brilliant point of the sun creep slowly from one edge of the black sky toward the other, throwing its faint cold glow across the ice, while the great stars and the soft band of the galaxy turned with stately calm above. A day on Eris is not a thing of light and warmth, but a slow and silent wheeling of the heavens over a frozen and sleeping world. There is a quiet companionship in the pairing of Eris and dysnomia, two bound worlds turning together at the edge of everything. Across all the vast and empty dark of the scattered disk, the bright sphere and its faint moon keep one another a kind of silent company, locked in a slow, gravitational dance that has carried on for ages and will carry on for ages more. Neither is ever truly alone, for each holds the other close. It is a small mercy in an immense emptiness that the most distant of the great frozen worlds should have at its side one faithful companion, circling steadily, never departing, sharing the long, cold journey through the dark. Two together, where there might have been only one alone. The cold of Eris is the cold of deep space itself, very nearly. The world hovers only a few dozen degrees above the lowest temperature anything in the universe can reach. At that profound chill, the cosmos grows still in a way hard to imagine. The restless jostling of atoms, which we feel as warmth, very nearly ceases. Eris rests near that floor of cold, its surface frozen into a stillness almost as deep as matter allows. It is among the coldest places the sun's light ever touches, a world held at the very threshold of absolute stillness. And there is a strange serenity in that thought. A world so cold that it has come almost to rest, frozen into a calm near the deepest the cosmos can offer. To picture the discovery of Eris is to picture a small triumph of attention, a faint dot noticed among uncounted others. On the photographs it was nothing remarkable, a dim point of light, easily overlooked, lost in a crowd of stars. What set it apart was only its motion, the way it had crept, almost imperceptibly, from its place between one night and the next. A less watchful eye, a hastier search, might have passed it by entirely. But it was caught and recognized, and from that single notice shift an entire world was drawn into human knowledge. There is a lesson in it about the rewards of attention, that the most extraordinary things may announce themselves only in the smallest of movements, waiting for someone careful enough to see. The orbit carries the world across a span of distances so great that it knows, in effect, two very different climates across its long year, though both are bitterly cold by any human measure. Near its closest approach to the sun, the faint warmth is just enough to lift a thin atmosphere. Out at its farthest, even that thin air freezes solid and falls. So the world knows a kind of summer and a kind of winter, though its summer is colder than the deepest Antarctic night, and its winter colder still. These vast slow seasons unfold across centuries, each one longer than the whole of recorded history, marking the great breathing rhythm of a world that takes 500 years to circle its distant sun. It is worth dwelling on the strangeness of a sky in which the sun is merely the brightest star. On Earth, the sun rules the heavens, a great golden disk that banishes the stars and lights the whole sky blue. On Eris, it is demoted to a point, still the brightest thing in that black heaven by far, but a point nonetheless, indistinguishable in size from the other stars, set apart only by its brilliance. To look up from Eris would be to see the sun not as the master of the sky, but as the chief among equals, the brightest jewel in a field of jewels, no longer a disk to warm a world, but a fierce white spark among countless others. It is the sun reduced to its essence, a star among stars, seen at last from far enough away to take its place in the crowd. There is a deep and gentle peace in knowing that Eris will keep on as it is, undisturbed for as long as the sun itself endures. Its orbit is stable, its frost enduring, its small moon faithful. Nothing in the foreseeable life of the solar system will alter its slow and silent round. Billions of years from now, when much has changed across the sun's domain, that bright frozen sphere will still be turning at the edge of the dark, breathing its sky up and letting it fall across the centuries, gleaming beneath its distant star. It is a fixed point of calm in a changing cosmos, a frozen constancy at the far edge of everything, and there is rest in knowing it is there, and will remain, long after every present worry has dissolved into the past. The discovery of Eris and its kin revealed that the solar system is not a tidy finished thing, but an open frontier, still being explored, still surrendering its secrets. For every distant world found, there may be others, fainter and farther, still waiting in the dark to be discovered. Eris is among the most distant and most massive yet known, but it need not be the last. The outer realm is vast, and our search has only begun to map it. There is wonder in that openness, in the knowledge that the cosmos near at hand is not yet fully charted, that surprises may still drift, unseen, at the freezing edge of the sun's light. The map of the dark beyond Neptune is still being drawn, world by world, point by faint point. Consider how the bright frost of Eris would feel beneath an imagined hand. Not that any hand could bear it, but in the mind's eye alone. It would be colder than anything ever touched, colder than any ice ever formed on Earth, hard as stone and dry as bone, for there is no moisture there to make it slick. The frozen nitrogen and methane would form a pale, firm crust, glittering faintly in the starlight, unyielding beneath the slightest pressure. There would be no give to it, no melt, no warmth drawn from any contact. It is ice unlike any ice we know, the frozen breath of a world packed across billions of years into a brilliant, bitter, stone-hard skin, gleaming pale and untouched beneath the stars. The name Dysnomia, given to the moon, carries a quiet thread of meaning all its own. In the old myths, she was the spirit of lawlessness, the daughter of strife, and there is a fitting echo in that, given how the discovery of Eris unsettled the long-standing order of the planets, breaking the old rules of what counted and what did not. The moon's name gestures gently and knowingly at that very upheaval, and so the pair turn together through the dark mother and daughter out of ancient story, strife and lawlessness, bound by gravity and by myth alike, a small frozen family at the edge of everything, named for the very disorder their finding once caused among the watchers of the sky. To reflect on Eris is to feel the scale of the solar system open out in the mind. The inner worlds, near and warm and familiar, give way to the great cold giants, and beyond them lies the frozen frontier where Eris drifts, nearly 100 times farther from the sun than the Earth at its most distant. The mind reaches outward, world by world, growing fainter and colder and slower as it goes, until it arrives at last at that bright lonely sphere turning in the dark. To hold the whole span in a single thought is to feel the immensity of the sun's domain, and to sense, at its far edge, the deep calm of a world so distant that it seems to belong almost to another order of things entirely. There is a profound stillness in the airless silence of Eris, a quiet more complete than any the earth has ever known. Here, even the deepest hush is filled with faint sounds, the stir of air, the distant murmur of the living world. There, for most of the long year, there is no air at all to carry sound, and so the silence is absolute, unbroken, total. No whisper could travel, no echo could return. It is a silence that has reigned, very nearly unbroken, for billions of years, over a frozen world turning soundlessly in a soundless dark. To imagine it is to imagine the deepest peace there is, a stillness so complete it seems to hold the whole world in a single, endless, breathless calm. The discovery of Eris reminds us how a single faint glimmer of light, properly attended to, can unfold into an entire world. From that one dim point, too faint for most eyes, betraying itself only by its slow drift, astronomers have drawn out a sphere of frozen air nearly the size of Pluto, heavier than its cousin, wrapped in brilliant frost, circled by a small grey moon, riding a vast and tilted orbit through the scattered dark. All of it assembled from a thin trickle of gathered light and a great deal of patient thought. There is something almost miraculous in that, the way the mind can build a whole world from so faint a trace, reaching across billions of miles to know a place it will, in all likelihood, never touch. The world's distance has a curious effect upon the calendar it keeps, for its seasons are not the brisk turning of an earthly year, but slow tides of warmth and cold lasting lifetimes. A single season on Eris, the long warming as it nears the sun, or the long cooling as it withdraws, stretches across more than a century, far longer than any human life. A child born at the start of one such season would die of old age before it had fully turned. There are no springs and autumns there in any sense a person could live through. There are only these vast glacial shifts unfolding so gradually that the world seems, to any single witness, to hold one unchanging season forever. Its year is too long for any life to feel. Eris belongs to that select handful of bodies massive enough to have pulled themselves perfectly round, and there is a dignity in the company it keeps. Only the largest of the worlds beyond Neptune share that distinction. The countless smaller bodies out there remain lumpish and irregular, their gravity too weak to smooth them. To have become a sphere is to have joined the planets and the great moons in a kind of geometric grace, to wear the same round form as the Earth and the Sun, shaped by the same patient inward pull. However small Eris may be against the giants, it is, in this one respect, their equal. A true sphere, drawn round by its own weight, a perfect ball of ice turning in the dark. There is a tenderness in imagining how little the sun can do for that far world, and how faithfully it shines on regardless. Across billions of miles the sun pours out its light in every direction, and only the faintest trickle of it ever reaches Eris, a few thousandths of the warmth that bathes the earth, scarcely enough to register against the cold of space, and yet that trickle never fails. Day after day, century after century, the sun sends its thin, pale light out to the frozen sphere, faithfully illuminating a world it can no longer warm. There is something almost devoted in it, a star tending, with what little reaches so far, the most distant and indifferent of its children. The orbit of Eris, stretched and tilted as it is, traces one of the longest paths of any large body the sun holds. To follow that path from end to end is to travel a loop billions of miles around, climbing far above the plane of the planets and plunging far below, swinging from the cold edge of the familiar out toward the threshold of the interstellar dark and back again. It is a journey no eye will ever watch complete, a circuit so vast that the world has not gone around even once since the dawn of human civilization. And along that whole immense road, Eris moves in silence, unhurried, faithful to a path laid down for it billions of years ago in the solar system's violent youth. It is a quiet marvel that a world can be both round and small, both a true sphere and a mere dwarf among planets. Eris is not large as worlds go. It would fit many times over inside the Earth, and yet it is large enough to have been sculpted into a perfect ball by its own gravity. It sits at a kind of threshold, on the very boundary between the irregular rubble of the small bodies and the smooth roundness of the worlds. To be a dwarf planet is to live exactly there, on that line, too small to dominate its orbit, yet large enough to have found the grace of a sphere. Eris embodies that in-between state, a small world wearing the perfect form of a great one. There is a gentle wonder in the realization that the frost of Eris and the snows of Earth are in a sense distant cousins. Both are made of frozen substances fallen from the sky. Both lay themselves down in soft white layers. Both gleam beneath whatever light reaches them. But where an earthly snow is frozen water melting at the first warm breath, the snow of Eris is frozen air, nitrogen and methane, fallen solid at temperatures so low that no warmth there could ever melt it. It is snow that will never thaw into rain, never run into rivers, never feed a single living thing. And yet it falls, as snow falls here, soft and silent and white, across a world that has never known a spring. To dwell on the remoteness of Eris is to feel how vast and quiet the outer solar system truly is. Out there, beyond the giant planets, the sun's light grows thin, and the spaces between worlds grow immense, until even the nearest neighbour lies unthinkably far across the dark. Eris drifts through that great hush at the very edge of it all, a small bright presence in an enormous emptiness, attended only by its faint moon. There is no bustle there, no crowding, no haste, only the deep, slow calm of a region where almost nothing ever happens, where a world may turn for ages undisturbed. It is the quietest corner of the sun's whole domain, and Eris is its most distant lamp. The discovery of Eris was, in a way, the discovery of a whole new kind of world, not a planet in the old sense, nor an asteroid nor a comet, but a large, round, icy body of the deep outer dark, a category the textbooks had no name for until that moment. It helped open the eyes of astronomers to a class of objects that had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for the instruments and the patience to find them. In drawing Eris from the blackness, the searchers drew out not just a single world, but a new way of seeing the solar system, a recognition that the sun's family is far larger and far stranger and far more various than the simple count of 8 planets had ever let on. The hunt that found Eris was, in truth, the latest chapter of a search nearly a century old. For generations, astronomers had wondered whether some large undiscovered body might lurk in the outer dark, tugging faintly at the known planets, a hypothetical world they sometimes called Planet X. The search for it led, decades ago, to the finding of Pluto, which turned out to be far too small to be the great hidden planet anyone had imagined. The looking never entirely stopped, and as instruments grew keener, it widened into a patient survey of the whole outer sky. Eris emerged from that long tradition of watching, not the giant planet of the old dream, but a discovery just as profound, a sign that the dark past Neptune was richer and more populous than any earlier searcher had supposed. Eris first betrayed itself on images captured a couple of years before anyone recognized what they held. The light that revealed it had been gathered and stored, waiting quietly in the archive, until the slow work of comparison finally caught the faint moving speck within it. There is a gentle strangeness in that the world had already been photographed, already been recorded and simply not yet noticed, its image lying dormant among countless others, until a patient eye returned to it. The moment of discovery was not the moment the light arrived, but the later moment someone saw what it meant. The world had been hiding in plain view, inside pictures already taken. Once its nature was confirmed, Eris was entered into the great catalogue of small bodies that orbit the Sun, given a permanent number alongside the many thousands of asteroids and icy worlds already listed there. It joined a vast roll call of charted objects, each one a tiny entry in the ongoing census of the solar system, a census that grows longer every year as fainter and farther bodies are teased from the dark. There is something humbling in seeing so grand a world reduced to a line in a ledger, and something reassuring too, a sign of how carefully the sky is now watched, how patiently each new world is noted and tracked, so that nothing once found is ever again entirely lost. The moon Dysnomia was spotted only months after Eris itself, and its finding required some of the sharpest vision human instruments can achieve. To resolve so faint a speck so close to the glare of its bright parent, astronomers turned to great telescopes fitted with systems that flex and reshape their mirrors many times a second, cancelling out the blurring of Earth's restless atmosphere. Only with that crisp, corrected sight could the small grey companion be picked out at all, a dim point hovering beside the brilliant one. The discovery of the moon was a quiet triumph of patience and precision, a faint shape drawn from beside a far brighter one that would soon give up the secret of the whole world's weight. For many years, the size of Dysnomia was only roughly guessed, but careful study has lately suggested it is larger and stranger than once believed. The moon appears to be made of darker, denser, rockier stuff than the bright icy world it circles, a curious mismatch, a dim, heavy companion beside a brilliant light one. Some astronomers think the pair may have formed together long ago in a great collision, a single shattering blow that splashed material into orbit and left a moon behind. If so, then Eris and Dysnomia are not merely neighbours but kin in the deepest sense, born of the same ancient impact, two pieces of one broken whole, turning ever since around their common centre in the dark. That slow turning around a shared centre is itself a subtle and lovely thing. Eris and its moon do not simply have one circle the other. Instead, both swing around a balance point between them, like two skaters joined at the hands, leaning back and wheeling about the still spot in their midst. By tracking exactly where that balance point lies, astronomers learn how the weight of the two worlds is shared, and from the steady, faithful rhythm of that wheeling, the whole system can be weighed and understood. It is a dance billions of years old and billions of miles away, two frozen bodies turning about an invisible point in the empty dark, keeping perfect time across the centuries. The careful timing of one of Eris's rare passages in front of a distant star did more than measure its width. It quietly reshaped the contest with Pluto. When astronomers caught the world briefly blotting out a faraway star and clocked the length of that small eclipse, the diameter they calculated came out a touch smaller than some earlier estimates, close enough to Pluto that the two could no longer be cleanly ranked by size. The world that had once seemed plainly the largest beyond Neptune turned out to be Pluto's near twin. The title of widest left genuinely uncertain. Yet its greater weight remained beyond doubt. So Eris settled into its true place, not necessarily the largest of the distant worlds, but by the measure of mass still the heaviest of them all. It helps to set Eris among its fellow dwarf planets, to feel where it stands. Far inward, in the warmer belt between Mars and Jupiter, turns a small round world that is the innermost of the dwarfs, a body large enough to have pulled itself into a sphere, yet sharing its zone with countless rocky neighbours. Out past Neptune ride others, a bright fast-spinning world stretched into an egg shape by its own swift rotation, and another pale and frigid like Eris, wrapped in its own methane frost. Each is a sphere too small to rule its orbit, each a world in its own right. Among them all, Eris is the most massive and among the most distant, the heavyweight of a scattered, far-flung family. The category that Eris and Pluto created together has a quiet logic worth savouring. The two worlds are, in a sense, the founding members of the dwarf planets, the very bodies whose discovery and comparison forced the new class into being. Without Eris, Pluto might have kept its old rank unquestioned. Without Pluto, Eris would have had no familiar world to be measured against. Each defined the other. They are bound not only by their likeness in size and their shared frozen nature, but by the role they played together in reshaping how the whole solar system is understood. Two distant spheres of ice, near twins across an enormous gulf, that between them rewrote a word. There is a tender reframing to be found in the story of Pluto's so-called demotion. To many it felt at first like a loss, a beloved ninth planet struck from the list, the solar system made smaller by a vote. But seen another way, nothing was taken at all. Pluto did not shrink or move or grow colder. It remained exactly the world it had always been. What changed was only the human understanding around it, which grew larger, not smaller. For the same stroke that reclassified Pluto revealed it as the first known member of a vast and wonderful new realm. The solar system did not lose a planet. It gained a whole frontier of frozen worlds, with Eris among the grandest of them. Deep beneath that bright frozen shell, the rocky heart of Eris may hold a faint and ancient warmth. The stone at the core of such a world contains traces of elements that release a trickle of heat as they slowly break down, a gentle internal fire kindled at the world's birth and fading across billions of years. It is nothing like the warmth of the sun, far too feeble to reach the frozen surface, and yet it suggests that the interior of Eris need not be uniformly, utterly cold. There may be deep down a place a little warmer than the frozen skin, where the world keeps a last faint ember of the heat it was born with, buried beneath miles of ice. Some scientists have wondered whether that buried warmth might be enough to keep, far below the surface, a hidden layer of liquid water, a deep dark ocean sealed beneath the frozen crust. It is only a possibility, unproven, and perhaps unprovable from afar, but it is not an idle one. Several frozen moons closer in are thought to cradle such buried seas, kept liquid by internal heat and the slow flexing of gravity. If Eris holds one too, it would be a lightless ocean under miles of ice, never touched by sun or air, stranger and stiller than any sea on earth. The thought alone widens the world, that beneath all that frozen silence there might lie hidden water, dark and deep and utterly secret. The very classification of Eris carries a special subname worth a moment's notice. Among the dwarf planets, those that orbit out beyond Neptune were given a designation of their own, a term marking them as the round, far-flung, icy kindred of Pluto. Eris belongs to that group, one of the distant frozen spheres set apart by both their roundness and their remoteness. There is a quiet tidiness in it, the way astronomers sorted the new worlds into nested families, each name a small act of understanding. And it places Eris firmly among its truest relations, not the rocky inner dwarf, but the pale, cold spheres of the outer dark, of which Pluto was the first and Eris the heaviest. How the world came to bear its particular name is a small story of human deliberation. After it was found, the discoverers proposed a name, and the choice passed through the careful process by which all such worlds are formally christened, a weighing of tradition, of suitability, of the long custom of drawing from ancient myth. The goddess of discord was settled upon, fitting for a world whose finding had sown such argument. There is something pleasing in knowing that the naming was not arbitrary but considered. That thought went into matching the silent sphere to its mythic title. Even at the cold edge of the solar system, a world is named with care, its label chosen to carry meaning across the ages. The freezing and thawing that resurface Eris may also, over time, crack and fracture its frozen crust. As the world warms a little near the sun and cools again in the deep, the ice expands and contracts, and such slow stresses can split a frozen surface, opening faint seams and ridges across the pale plain. Whether Eris wears such features is unknown. No eye has yet seen its surface clearly enough to say, but it is the kind of quiet sculpting that the deep cold and the long seasons might work upon it. Picture, perhaps, a bright field of frost laced with fine, pale cracks, etched slowly across millions of years by nothing more violent than the gentle breathing of the world's own air. Eris turns out at a distance where the sun's warmth is so spent that the world is governed almost entirely by the cold of space itself. Were the sun to vanish, the temperature of that frozen surface would scarcely fall at all, for it already hovers near the chill of the empty dark between the stars. The sun, at that remove, contributes only the faintest whisper of heat, enough, near the closest approach, to lift a breath of atmosphere, and little more. The world is, in effect, already most of the way to the temperature it would hold adrift in interstellar space with no sun at all. It lives at the threshold where a star's warmth fades into the background cold of the wider galaxy. In the immense future, the story of Eris may hold one last warm chapter. Billions of years from now, the sun will swell into a vast red giant as it nears the end of its life, growing hundreds of times larger and pouring out far more light than it does today. When that happens, even the frozen worlds of the deep outer dark will feel an unaccustomed warmth, and Eris, for a brief span against its endless year, might thaw as never before, its ices melting, its atmosphere swelling thick around it. It would be a strange and fleeting summer at the edge of everything, an ancient frozen world warmed at last near the very end by a dying and gigantic sun. To picture the scale of the scattered disk where Eris lives is to feel the outer solar system open into something almost boundless. The familiar ring of icy bodies just past Neptune is broad enough, but the scattered disk reaches far beyond it, its members flung onto orbits that climb to enormous distances before falling back. Eris is among the largest bodies known to roam that immense outer territory, swinging from the frozen fringe of the planets out toward the brink of interstellar space and back across the slow centuries. It is a region so vast and so sparsely filled that a traveller could cross it for a lifetime and pass nothing at all. A great dark commons at the rim of the sun's reach, where Eris drifts as one of its brightest and most far-wandering residents. There is a quiet poetry in the fact that no probe has ever gone to Eris, and likely none will for a very long time. The distances are so immense, and the world so far along its lonely orbit, that to send even a swift spacecraft there would be the work of generations, a journey of many decades, perhaps a lifetime or more just to arrive. So Eris remains, for now, a world known only from afar, glimpsed in faint reflected light, its surface unvisited and unseen. There is no sorrow in that, only a kind of patient waiting. The world is in no hurry to be reached. It will keep turning, bright and silent, however long it takes for some distant future craft to make the long crossing out to meet it. To weigh Eris against the Earth is to feel its smallness and its grandeur at once. It would fit many times over within our own world, a frozen sphere far smaller than the ground beneath you. And yet it is a true world all the same, round and self-shaped, with a moon of its own and an atmosphere that comes and goes. It is small among planets and vast among the icy bodies of the dark, a dwarf beside the Earth, a giant beside the countless lesser fragments that share its distant realm. Eris lives in that in-between scale, neither great nor trivial, a modest world wearing the full dignity of roundness and motion, turning faithfully at the cold outer boundary of everything the sun still holds. The slow rhythms of Eris put even the longest human spans into a gentle perspective. A single one of its years could hold the entire age of many a nation. A single one of its long seasons outlasts any life. To a being that lived on Eris and measured time by its world's own turning, all of recorded human history would seem to flash by in the space of a few short years. There is a strange comfort in that scale, in setting the rush of near things against so vast and slow a clock. The frozen world keeps time in centuries, unhurried and serene, and to rest the mind upon its rhythm is to feel the small urgencies of the moment loosen and grow quiet. The decision that reshaped the planets was reached at a great gathering of astronomers in a European city, and it was anything but calm. Voices rose, opinions clashed. The meaning of a single familiar word was argued back and forth across a crowded hall. In the end, the matter came to a show of hands, and the new definition carried, and with it, the new category that held Eris and Pluto both. There is a certain fitting irony in all that heat, given that the world at the centre of it was named for the goddess of discord herself. The strife was real, but it was entirely ours. Eris, far away, turned on in perfect silence, untroubled by the human quarrel its discovery had set alight. Eris finally laid to rest the old dream of a great hidden planet tugging at the others. For decades, faint puzzles in the motions of the outer planets had hinted to some that a large unseen world might lurk in the dark. But as the planets were measured ever more precisely, those puzzles dissolved, and the need for any giant hidden world faded away. Eris, when it came, was no such colossus. It was a modest sphere, smaller across than the Earth's own moon, far too slight to have moved the planets at all. The outer dark, it turned out, held many worlds, but not the single great one of legend. The mystery resolved not into one giant, but into a scattered multitude of the small and the far. Seen from that frozen ground, the sun would shine as a point of a particular brilliance, still dazzling, still the brightest thing in the sky by a wide margin, yet small enough to be reckoned simply as an unusually bright star. If you knew the night sky of Earth, you might compare it to the most brilliant stars you've ever seen, only fiercer still, a single hard white point outshining all its neighbours. It would throw no warmth you could feel, paint no colour across the black, soften no shadow. It would simply hang there, the chief lamp of a frozen world, bright enough to find your way by and far too distant to be anything more than the keenest spark in an endless field of sparks. Set the bright face of Eris beside the mottled face of Pluto, and a quiet difference appears. Pluto, seen up close, wears a varied surface. Pale plains beside darker, ruddier regions, patches of tan and rose where ancient ice has weathered and stained. Eris, as best anyone can tell from afar, shows no such markings, only a smooth, uniform brilliance, a single, unbroken white from edge to edge. It is the most evenly bright of the great distant worlds, its face untroubled by the dark blotches and coloured stains that mark its cousin. Where Pluto is a world of contrasts, Eris seems a world of one pure tone, a clean white sphere, gleaming without blemish in the faint and distant light. As far as anyone can tell, Eris wears no rings, none of the bright encircling bands that adorn some of the larger worlds and, surprisingly, a few of the smaller bodies of the outer dark. It is a single clean sphere with a single distant moon, unadorned, its frozen face open to the black sky above. There is a plainness in that which suits it. No glittering halo, no encircling arcs, just the bright ball of ice and its faithful grey companion turning in the emptiness. The world needs no ornament. Its beauty is the simple beauty of a pure white sphere set against the dark, attended by one small moon, and nothing more. It is possible that Eris and its moon have settled into a deep and steady embrace, each forever showing the same face to the other. Over long ages, the slow pull of gravity can lock two orbiting bodies into such a rhythm, so that they turn in perfect step, the moon hanging fixed above one spot on the world holding one face always toward the moon. If Eris and dysnomia have reached that state, then from one whole hemisphere of Eris the moon would never rise or set at all, but hang motionless in the black sky forever, while from the other hemisphere it would never be seen. A moon nailed to one place in the heavens, unmoving across the centuries, a stranger sky still than the one already imagined. At its farthest from the sun, Eris drifts through a darkness so deep that the distant stars themselves become a meaningful part of its light. Out at that lonely extreme, the sun has dwindled to its very smallest and faintest, and the soft collective glow of all the far stars in the arching band of the galaxy contributes its own pale share to the dimness. The world is lit then by a sky's worth of distant suns nearly as much as by its own. It is illumination gathered from across the whole galaxy, a faint silver wash falling on the frost from every direction at once, the combined light of countless stars reaching a world too far from its own sun to be warmed by it any longer. The orbit Eris follows is, for all its strangeness, remarkably stable, a path it will keep for an immense span of time. The great loop laid down for it in the solar system's youth has settled into a steady rhythm, and the world will trace and retrace it for billions of years to come, neither falling inward nor drifting free. There is a deep reliability in that, a frozen world keeping faithfully to its appointed round, swinging out and falling back, out and back, across spans of time that dwarf all of human history. To know that the orbit holds, that the pattern endures, is to feel something settle in the mind, a vast clockwork turning out there in the dark, steady and sure, asking nothing and keeping perfect time. Eris marks, in a sense, one of the far frontiers of the charted solar system, among the most distant large worlds whose orbits are now known with confidence. Past it, the dark grows fainter and less known, populated perhaps by other worlds too dim or too far to have yet revealed themselves. Eris stands near the edge of the mapped, a bright outpost at the threshold of the unknown, beyond which the solar system fades into territory still waiting to be explored. It is a lighthouse of sorts at the rim of the charted dark, a known and named world gleaming faintly, marking how far human understanding has so far reached out into the great surrounding night. The astronomer who led the search later told the whole story plainly, even cheerfully, casting himself as the one who had unmade a planet. There was warmth in that telling, and no triumph over Pluto, only the honest wonder of a person who had set out to chart the outer dark and found, instead of a tidy answer, a world that overturned an old certainty. To discover Eris was to be handed a question rather than a trophy. Not how many planets are there, settled at last, but what does it even mean to be a planet at all? That the search ended not in a clean edition but in a redrawing of the map is, perhaps, the truest kind of discovery, the kind that changes not just the count of things, but the way of seeing them. To glimpse Eris for yourself, even through a fine telescope in a dark sky, is barely possible at all. It lies near the very limit of what amateur instruments can reach, a speck so faint that only the largest backyard glasses can coax it from the black, and even then only as a dim and unremarkable point. There is nothing to see of its frost, its roundness, its moon. There is only the faint fact of its light, arriving across all those billions of miles. And yet to know that the dim speck in the eyepiece is a whole frozen world, turning silently far out where the sun's light has all but faded, is its own quiet thrill, the distant glimmer made meaningful by everything the mind now knows it to be. For all that has been learned of it, Eris is almost certainly just one of many, a single bright example of a kind of world that may number in the hundreds or the thousands out in the far dark, most of them still unseen. The ones found so far are simply the brightest and nearest of a hidden multitude, and every new survey of the outer sky may yet draw more of them from the black. To hold Eris in mind, then, is to hold a representative of a whole vast and shadowy population, the known face of an unknown crowd, the lit window in a dark and distant city of frozen worlds whose full number no one yet knows. The solar system's true extent is still unfolding, world by faint world, and Eris was among the first to point the way. In the end, the small white sphere gave the solar system a more honest shape. Before it, the map seemed finished, the worlds neatly counted, the edges drawn. After it, the map became something living again, open at its rim, still being filled in, larger and humbler than before. A frozen world at the freezing frontier by simply being found, reminded everyone that the cosmos near at hand is far from fully known. There are worse gifts than that, to be shown gently how much remains to be discovered, and how much wonder is still waiting quietly in the dark. Picture, one last time, that distant sphere turning in the dark, and let the picture grow whole. A bright frozen world at the outermost rim of the sun's domain, wrapped in a shell of methane and nitrogen ice, gleaming with a brilliance born of the deepest cold. A world heavier than Pluto, though nearly its twin in size, riding a vast and tilted orbit that needs more than 5 centuries to close. A world that lifts a thin atmosphere and lets it settle again across the ages, snowing its own sky down upon itself in soundless white falls. A world with a single faithful moon, named for the goddess of strife whose findings stirred the great debate over what a planet truly is. It turns out there now, silent and bright and far, exactly as it has for billions of years. The final wonder of Eris is perhaps the simplest and the deepest, that it is there at all, and that we know it. A small white world turning quietly in the dark at the farthest frontier the sun still holds, so distant that its light needs half a day to find us, so cold that its very air lies fallen and frozen on the ground, so remote that no eye has ever truly seen its face, and yet known, named, weighed, and understood, conjured into human awareness from a single faint glimmer of reflected starlight. It asked nothing of us. It went on turning whether anyone watched or not, through the whole long history of the earth, indifferent and serene. And then, in the briefest moment of all that vast time, a few patient watchers looked into the dark and noticed it, and drew it gently into the light of the mind. To know that such a world exists far beyond all reach, turning in perfect peace at the bottom of everything, and to need nothing from it, and to owe it nothing, is a wonder that asks only to be held lightly, and then released, like a faint star slipping below the edge of sleep. There is a particular peace in resting the thoughts on something so distant and so calm. Eris will not change tonight, or tomorrow, or in 10,000 years. It will keep its slow round at the edge of everything, breathing its frozen air, gleaming beneath its faraway star, holding its small moon close. Whatever passes here, that bright sphere abides out there, untroubled, at peace with its own immense remoteness. It carries no message, makes no demand, asks for nothing at all, only turns, silent and white, at the floor of the dark. And in the thought of it, drifting so far and so still, there is a quiet to be found that the near world rarely offers, a calm as deep and clean as fresh snow on a windless night. The journey to the edge of the sun's domain is over now, and there is nothing left to do but rest. You have drifted in thought all the way out to the freezing frontier and back, and now the mind can set it gently down. There is nothing to carry, there is nothing to keep, there is nothing to hold on to from any of it. And if you are still here, drifting at the edge of sleep, another quiet journey is already waiting for you on the screen, ready whenever you are, or never at all. There is no need to choose. There is no need to do anything now but let yourself sink a little deeper into the dark. Let the facts go. Let the distances go. Let the names and the numbers loosen and slip away, like snow settling soundlessly onto a frozen ground. You do not need to remember any of it. It will keep, out there in the dark whether you hold it or not. The body grows heavy now. The breath comes slow. The small white world turns far away and asks nothing of you at all. There is only the dark and the soft gleam of distant ice and the quiet that holds you. Let your thoughts settle, the way the frost settles slowly in the long cold night. Let go. Rest now. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.